I'm going to Boston on April 21st. Hopefully, male or female, an American will be a winner because of what happened last year with the bomb explosion. I was there in front of it, like you're the flags where they are, and this across from is where I was for 4 hours. God sent his angels to me because I was there 5 minutes spare until it happened. So I felt blessed, and my time was not called.
The marathon is 26.2 miles of excruciating endurance to get from point A to point B. Like a journey, not every marathon is the same. Anything can happen within that space and time. One never quite knows what to expect along the way. The key to any journey is perseverance. For Meb Keflezighi, his entire life has been a journey to overcome. Born in war-torn Eritrea, he escaped to Italy with his family. They eventually settled in San Diego, where Meb grew up. Meb ran high school track and eventually became a collegiate track star at UCLA. Olympics and marathon victories were just down the road. Meb has often not been the fastest person in the field, but he is certainly among the smartest. He runs like a tactician and meticulously plans out how he will handle a course. Family, faith, and an acceptance of fate drive him. His heart wills him to win.
Meb's really been the runner of the decade for New York Roadrunners. He's the athlete that's run here most in New York City. Is the 2009 champion, first American winner in 27 years here. It's been amazing to watch him from his very first run when he debuted in the marathon here to become one of the most accomplished marathoners the world's ever seen.
Well, I was born in Eritrea, and I remember very little bit of it, at least when I left. And you know, it was third world country and big war that was going on against Ethiopia. It lasted 30 years, and I was born in 1975. So it was 1961 to 1991. I was in the middle of it, and my dad has to walk 225 miles to save his life to Sudan, and because he was wanted by the soldiers, Ethiopian soldiers, so he was going to get killed or get prison. So my mom had to convince him it's okay to go, but he's leaving big responsibility behind. 5 kids, 1 on the way, and a wife behind, and it was a tough decision, but they made that journey, and through the blessing of God, he made that journey safely, even though he had robbers, snakes, scorpions, lions, and hyenas on the way, but in wilderness, basically, and at one point he was gun-pointed. The trigger never went off, and he made it safe, and fortunately he looked back and saved us to land of freedom.
There's an underlying drive in Meb that's readily apparent. I think a lot of that comes from his background and his appreciation for every chance he gets to run and his desire to make the most of his opportunities here.
We don't have switches, we don't have electricity, don't running water, and obviously a kid, if you want to grind the flour after cultivating it, you have to go to the capital and crush it or make flours out of the grain. And this kid was making that round trip, and he ended up going to the restroom, and he found playing around with a landmine, and the next thing you know is it erupted and it exploded, and we heard that, and then basically the whole body was scattered around, so we have to go collect pieces with the stake, pieces by pieces, and so they could have a proper burial of the kid. But from that, I learned from early childhood that life is precious and try to do the best you can to maximize your God-given talent. My first passion is to play soccer. I played in Eritrea with a makeshift soccer ball, and then went to Italy, lived in Italy for a year and a half. And they used to call me Pele, that was my nickname. And then I came to the United States on October 21st, 1987. When I was 12 years old, when I went to 7th grade PE class, the teacher, the Lord said, if you break 6 minutes and 15 seconds, you get a Roosevelt Junior High Mile Club t-shirt, get an A, and you get your picture on the gym. Well, I want to get all those 3, and I just ran as hard as I can. And the coach looked at his watch, and it said 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and he's just blown away. He says, you're going to be an Olympian. So I met Ron Tabb as a sophomore in high school, and I was having some Achilles issues, and I was working out in the San Diego High, the Balboa Stadium, and kind of seen me run before, and he's like, you okay? I'm like, oh, my Achilles hurt. He worked on me, and he says, one day if you stay disciplined and you stay committed, you will make the Olympic team. When you meet somebody, sometimes it's a coincidence, but it's God's plan. I mean, even though you don't know it, it's like, why is that happening? I mean, I read a lot of religion books, and it's called God's appointment in many ways, and it's like, how did that happen? But God has planted those seeds for us, even though, you know, we don't know where we're heading. For sure, He does, and He got us connected with some people and talk to them and help us make decisions or guide us and to be His disciple, His, talk about Him, and, amazing things that happen is like the faith, and for me it has been a big time, but you never know who you're gonna run into tomorrow or the next day, but sometimes they have that time to be able to say, wow, I remember now why it happened. And for me, I've never been a marathoner or had no chance of it, but He planned to run. So having that, Jose Perez, and many other people, like the van camps, so open, my mentors for life, and I don't know how, if I was in different high school, or what would have happened, so it's amazing. Coach Larson has been my coach since I was 18 years old, since I was in high school, and sometimes you can make a decision to college. You don't know where you're gonna go, who you're gonna encounter with, if you're gonna get along with the coach or not. And for me, I went to UCLA for the academic of it. But blessing to God, I ran to this coach who was San Diego's only thing we had in common and whatnot, and the rest is we're still working together for 19 years.
I was never in a hurry with him. I saw early on that he was taking longer to get to a level of distance running in his workouts, some of the amount of volume intensity that some of the other athletes I'd had done earlier, but he could race above that level. So had to be careful that we didn't destroy him by allowing him to do too much, because he's got a very powerful engine, and he's got a very powerful mind, so he's going to give you everything he has. And I foresaw that possibly he would have a future in professional distance running after he graduated, as I had some other fellows from the past. So it was actually an advantage that we weren't trying to win the NCAA cross-country title every year, because if we put him in with really top distance runners that pushed him hard to try to win each year, it may have used up his career earlier than other athletes. The similarities between him going into college and some of the guys who had beaten him in high school and were beating him in the early years in college, but never had a successful career post-collegiately that Meb did, I think shows that by not pushing him that hard in college, not surrounding him with guys that would encourage him to go beyond what was best for him at the time, probably helped him to get to a long professional career, which he has to this day.
My first Olympic team, I never gave running a priority until I graduated UCLA, because education to me and to my parents and my siblings was very important. And once I graduated in '99, then 2000 was the Olympic year. I had to make a tough decision whether to run to Eritrea or the United States. I decided to go for the US and not only make the team, I won the trials. God's blessing was closer than a 100-meter race, and I was on my way to Sydney, and I was so happy to wear that USA jersey and be an Olympian.
I was very fortunate because I was on the Olympic staff. I was the men's distance coach for the U.S. Olympic team in 2004 in Athens. So I went over there, in fact, the year before on my own, checked out the marathon course. Went to Crete, where we were setting up the training camp. Convinced everybody to come over 3 weeks early to get used to the heat and humidity on Crete. Go over to Athens. I had to go over there a little bit earlier, but bring Meb in at the last minute. Did a lot of testing to make sure that the smog wouldn't negatively influence Meb. Did workouts when he first got there right in Athens. I ran in the middle of the day in Athens the year before, on the hottest day of the year in Europe, just to see what it felt like. Well, we had to be ready for the worst of it. And Actually, on race day, it was in the 90s and pretty humid, running on fresh asphalt, and you have to go up about a 12-mile hill. It's a tough deal, but that creates opportunities, because if you make good decisions, and a lot of people will make mistakes with all those moving parts, it gives you an opportunity to finish higher than you would just going to the starting line when everything is equal, because about 38 guys had faster times than Meb did going into the race. And he ended up second and had a real shot at first right at the end, but he was protecting his second place and a medal that no American male had gotten in 28 years. So.
In 2004, I was fortunate enough to make my second Olympic team. I made the 10K team, which I won the trials, which is a championship record, and barely made the marathon team. I was second to Alan Culpepper, but I had to make a tough decision. You know, I promised or made a personal goal that I wanted to change US distance run, and then it's going to be, most likely it's going to be 10K where I won the trials, and that was 27:30, or the marathon, which is my fourth marathon. I'm 5 minutes behind everybody else. But when you believe in yourself and, you know, you ask for God's blessing, then the rest will take care of itself. And I went with the 10K, with the marathon. You know, it was 6 miles, 26 miles, the last day or 2 weeks vacation, and tough decision, but what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish of the God-given talent? I went with a marathon where it was equalizer, hot hilling, and tough course. And then I was in a crate for a training camp, and about 10 days before it was about 10 days before the Olympic marathon, and I was running with 3 of my teammates, and we'd run in the rural area, and those dogs come, and dog comes from, I see them, I'm always scared of dogs, but I tell them, hey, there's dogs, oh, those are the friendly dogs, and then the next thing is they're around their house, and then I was the last guy, and the dogs, the German Shepherd, straight jumps from my throat. I had to fall back and try to kick him, and then I hyperextended my knee and built tendonitis. I couldn't even walk the next day. And but you know, I said, you know what, it is what it is. God has his plans, whatever it is, just hold your composure, and I'm here, I'm gonna compete. But I remember calling my brother Howie to the starting line when I was going, says, because of 9/11, I didn't take a lot of my family members to Athens in 2004. I tell them, hey, if I drop out or don't finish, just let you know I had this incident and don't worry about it, I'll be okay. But, you know, through the miracle of God, I was able to win a silver medal. Who would have ever thought? During the 2007, which is in November, which was in New York for the 2008 Olympic Games, the trials were held in New York, and you know, I was in my prime. You know, I was fittest I could ever be, and was excited. You know, I was second in New York, third in Boston Marathon, and now I'm kind of win my first marathon and then go to Beijing to bring another medal. And I was sitting next to Ryan Shea on the bus to the starting line, and we talked a little bit, and you know, talked about our first members of how the police escort us and whatnot. And then next thing we know is that we get to our zone, kind of meditate and stuff, and the race goes off, and then 10 miles to the course, I see an ambulance going on the way. They cut us off because it was Carturian course, same loop, and then I'm like, what's the ambulance doing? And I tell, in fact, Ryan Hall, who was out running next, I'm like, let's just go push the pace, get it 1, 2, 3, so we can go to the Olympic team. But you know, 2 miles, 12, and we looked at the time, it said 40 something, so we were fast enough, and then 12 miles into the race, I started getting cramps, so my calves was hurting, my hip was hurting, and then I was not, obviously I can't win it anymore, which I was favored to win it, and then I finished well. And then finish second, maybe finish third, and I could be on the team, still want to go to the Beijing Olympics, and then next thing I know is I was fourth, and then I was fifth, and my mind started thinking maybe I could be alternate. And then unfortunately I was slowly losing ground, and people are saying, hey, Meb, you're still out here, we love you, and I'm crying, and I finished 8th, and then as soon as I finished, a friend of mine goes, you know, do you know what happened to Ryan? I'm like, I'll talk about Ryan Hall because of the missed rain, it might fall off or something. And he goes, no, Ryan Shea. I'm like, no, what happened? And he's like, he's dead. I'm like, you know, you get a moment of shock that your guy next to, which I didn't realize when he told me this, that he wasn't even sitting next to me because I was just lost for word. I was physically, mentally, emotionally just wiped out. And I'm like, I fell down the ground, just cried hysterically. And it just puts life in perspective. What gave me help through the tough moments is to believe in God. He has his reasons, just like when we meet good people or the right people and whatnot, and then there's an incident that happened in our life for a reason, and maybe taught me what the precious gift that He given us, the life that we have, and unfortunately He calls other people to go His way too. You know, Ryan Shea was too young to go, but God had His plan to call him to go early that way, and it just somehow, some way you have to dig deep and say, you know what, God, I trust You, and you have to, you know, if we can't control our destiny, He can, so you have to have the faith. The Bible is all this is an amazing, and you know, you have Corinthians 4:13, so that all things are possible through God, and there's other prayers that are just, you know what, if you think deep down, anytime I've never been disappointed whenever I open the Bible and read about it anywhere there. It's just like, it just makes you appreciate how much there is. 2009 was a special year because it was a year that I won the New York City Marathon, but before that was kind of my comeback race. In 2009, Houston, I had this feeling that my first race back, I won the half marathon, a personal best. And I sent a text to Mary Wittenberg, who we here, the CEO for the New York Road Runners, and I said, you know what, Mary, you've been second and third and whatnot, but this is the year.
Yeah, I remember texting. Like literally, I remember we were texting, and he called and said, this is my year, and I believed it, and it was. And that's, you know, he's just Meb's I don't know. Sometimes I think he's tuned into a bigger picture. And
sometimes, you know, God has a way of talking to you, and I sent her that message. And then actually in also September there was another race that I was competing against others in London. They were running. I said they ran phenomenal time. I said, well, I'm gonna run with them in November in New York. But I'm like, I said, well, I guess I could say bye-bye to that win, but I tell my wife, it took me a little bit of time, a minute or two, and then I said, you know what? They have to do it in November, and hopefully my goal is to be ready in November, and everything is together, and to win my first marathon ever.
I turned, and it still gives me chills. The 2013 marathon meant so much. It was really important for us to honor New York, remember those really impacted by the hurricane, and really to have an amazing day for the city and for the runners from around the world. And that's the reason it was really important for us to have Meb here. You know, Meb called and said, I've had some injuries, I'm not as ready. I'm healthy now, but I'm not as ready as I should be. Should I come? And we said, Meb, we need you to be here. And your spirit is such a part of this event and represents so much of what this is all about. So he came, and in typical Meb fashion, no one else knew he wasn't in the best shape. He went for it, and there he was for 20 miles, 16 miles, running near the front of the pack, giving it his all. And then when it got hard, and a lot of people might have stopped, being the caliber athlete that he is and accustomed to winning or being in the top 10, he kept going. And to see him cross our finish line hand in hand with one of our top locals, Mike Cassidy from Staten Island, and the two of them a year before had stood up and said, you know, they were really in support of the city and the marathon when times were tough in 2012, and here they are crossing the finish line together. It just represented so much of the spirit of our city and the spirit of marathon and how it brings us all together. And I can still see turning my head and seeing them come together through that finish line, and just the moment sort of frozen in my mind because the symbolism was really incredible.
You know, it's great to be back in New York. This is home, away from home, and I love competing here. Starting from back in the days, the 8K to the half marathon when it was in August, finishing second there to Thomas Nairigi, I believe, by 2-3 seconds, and then getting it to January now, in March, to do a tune-up before the spring is huge. And my last race last year, crossing the finish line with Meb Keflezighi, was huge, just because as a sport, you try to push your body to the envelope. Why? Because people are counting on you, trying to do the best that you can to represent yourself, your family, your country. And sometimes you don't make it healthy, and you struggle through it. But when you are able to finish the finish line, you have to keep going, whether it's walking or there's one thing, get to that finish line no matter what. And for me, that's unless I fell or bleeding and whatnot, that's what I'm going to do. And Mike wrote a beautiful blog, but I thought it was 2 miles, but I guess lack of oxygen was hurting so bad, or wanted to be 2 miles to the finish line, but it was 3 miles. And we just encourage each other to keep pushing to that finish line. And as many others have encouraged me to go to the finish line with them, and I really couldn't. My 20th mile at the New York City Marathon was 9:53, which is twice as double what I usually go on the mile. So it took me twice as long for 1 mile what I usually do, sub 5 minutes per mile. And but he encouraged me. I said, well, I'm gonna give it a try, and kept trying and trying. And he was a lot more stronger to the finish line. He could have left me behind, but we just said we're gonna cross, holding hands together and be strong to each other, to the direction. And that's what running is. That's what the unity of sports is. Even though, like Matt talked about, we all hurt. You hope to hurt at the finish line or 1 mile away, or instead of a 15 like I was that year, last year. And at 19, you gave up on my body just like yours did. But you know what? You got to the finish line. I got to the finish line, and well, I always say run to win. Doesn't always mean first place, but getting the best out of yourself each day and each day of our lives. Best you can. Sometimes you go for the win, sometimes you just go for a place. And today, I feel healthy to finish, and looking forward to Boston on April 21st. During my ice bath, it's called Bible time, or my prayer time. The prayer of Jabez is what I read, and also the Bible. And I'm there for 15 minutes. I'm secluded to that, to just, people say, oh, after doing it 2-3 days, first 3 days hurts, but after that, I'm used to it. But that's a quiet moment for me to pray and analyze and be able to, sometimes I'm in the forest and the river, and sometimes I'm in my home ice bath, and I have the shower here coming. I imagine that I'm speaking to God. I'm speaking to, on the mic, what God has given me this opportunity to relish your message. I think I've been doing a lot of cross training on my elliptical, and in preparation for that. Now that, getting ready for this race, I realized last year at the New York City Marathon how important mileage is, and my body gave up a 19.3, so I started doing double days. People usually ask me, obviously not you guys, but when I introduce myself, first-timers, they're like, do you run every day as a professional? I tell them, I run 12 times a week. You do the math, that's 5 times double days. And so I've been training a lot on double days, and also sometimes 3 times a day by doing elliptical training. And then, so it's been fun, and the mileage, the endurance is there. I was hoping to sharpen up the last couple of weeks on my speed. My hamstring got a little tight last week, but other than that, I can have asked for a better training base in terms of the mileage, the long run. I already covered the distance. I've done 15 miles on sub 5 minute pace and all that stuff. So we're putting about 100, 120 miles a week on top of that. So we'll see what happens on Sunday, and hopefully get ready for Boston on April 21st, and hopefully eventually go, if it's in God's plan, 2016 is the plan, and then hopefully if that's on his plan, to make my 4th Olympic team is my next goal.
I really hope Meb will be back to run the marathon. I hope that he will agree to coach some of the kids in our youth running programs here at New York Roadrunners and encourage them. Meb has all kinds of options in his life going forward. When he retires from running, I think he'd be an amazing coach. So I told him next you know, in 15 years, I hope he's here as the coach of an American winner of the TCS New York City Marathon.
I think that as athletes that were running well when Meb was coming up, I was encouraging them. They were in their early 30s and thinking about possibly retiring. Bob Kennedy, for instance. And I was saying, Bob, don't let Meb or these young guys have it. Force them to earn it, because that will make America a better distance running nation, because that raises the bar. We got to get that bar up there higher and higher. So Meb doesn't have to do anything more for American distance running, but he can, and that's one thing, is make those guys come out and get him, and that's a fun thing to watch those guys and stretch us out a little bit more maybe.